Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to convey my greetings and thanks to the members of the Human Rights Council as well as the observer states for their constructive participation in consideration of the third periodic report of my country within the UPR of May this year. In particular, we would like to thank the delegations of those states that noted the substantial progress made by Azerbaijan in protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms. We greatly value the contribution of the UPR to the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms. This mechanism facilitates a further building on national achievements and is an important forum for interaction among states. During the consideration by the working group of Azerbaijan's report, my country received 259 recommendations. 179 of those were accepted by us. Our position on the remaining recommendations was set out in an additional document which we submitted to the Secretariat. I should point out that information on the implementation of the recommendations made to us was provided already in our third national report, as well as in my statement at the May session, as well as in the additional document distributed by us today. Nevertheless, I would like to touch on a number of issues mentioned in the recommendations in order to provide an update. In particular, in order to better control implementation of recommendations from the United Nations treaty bodies and the UPR, we are creating a working group at the deputy minister level among the concerned ministries and agencies. This working group, which will function continuously, will have the role of a national mechanism. The activity will be coordinated by the Foreign Ministry. We are convinced that this mechanism will make it possible to analyze and assess the results of implementation of our obligations under international legal instruments and the recommendations accepted during the UPR, and will enrich the normative and legislative base in our country and human rights practice. Azerbaijan, as in previous cycles of the UPR, will continue to provide interim reports on implementation of the recommendations. Recognizing the important role played by the special procedures mandate holders, Azerbaijan will continue to cooperate and dialogue with them. In that connection, I should state that the High Commissioner at the 38th session of the Human Rights Council mentioned Azerbaijan among the 19 countries that actively cooperate with the special rapporteurs. Mr. President, during the consideration of our report, a number of countries commended the measures taken by our government to combat corruption. I should add that in the first half of 2018 alone, our Directorate to Combat Corruption under the Office of the Prosecutor General sent 115 criminal cases to court against 184 persons and also provided for compensation of the damage caused. In May, we gave details of measures taken to develop the Institute of Lawyers in Azerbaijan. On the basis of the review of the exams held at the beginning of the year, 300 lawyers were admitted to the bar, and thus Azerbaijan now has 1,535 active lawyers. In addition, the forces of law and order carry out measures to combat torture and inhuman or degrading treatment. Recently, there has been increased coordination among the Ministries of Justice, Internal Affairs, and the Office of the Prosecutor General to ensure full investigation of all cases of torture and inhuman treatment and accountability before the law for the perpetrators. The Amnesty Commission took the decision not to allow amnesties in the case of persons found guilty of torture and other forms of ill treatment. At our government's initiative, reports regarding the results of visits by the Committee of the Council of Europe on the prevention of torture to Azerbaijan in various years were published on the site of the committee. This initiative was commended by the committee as a sign of commitment to transparency within our country. Currently, Azerbaijan's authorities are discussing a number of proposals to improve the legislation to address the registration and transfer of finances by NGOs, developed within the context of the Council of Europe's plan of action. Certain issues covered in these recommendations are also reflected in the proposals. Distinguished members, precisely 3 years ago, in September 2015, at the historic UN summit, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted. Azerbaijan was part of the global initiative and took on commitments to fulfill the goals set out in the agenda. In May, we provided detailed information on their implementation. As a result of comprehensive measures, we have achieved success in reducing the level of poverty, in providing health care and improving the environment, increasing education levels, and in ensuring gender equality. At the same time, because of an effective economic strategy with a rational use of national capacities, we have been able to maintain economic growth trends as well as social development and strengthen macroeconomic stability, improving the investment environment and increasing economic diversification. In the first half of this year, the GDP rose by 1.3%. In the non-oil sector, it rose by 2%. Inflation was 3%. In the non-oil sector, which plays an important part in diversification of the economy, there was an increase of 8.8%, in agriculture 7.6%, in information and communication services 4.9%, and in trade an increase of 2.5%. The average monthly income compared to last year rose by 4%. We continue to implement measures within state programs to develop our regions, and in particular to improve infrastructure and social services. In the first half of the year, the state investment program was implemented to the level of 47%. Education is one of our main priorities, since an educated society underpins successful, sustainable development. In our country, literacy levels are 100%, and by 2020, preschool education should achieve 90% coverage. We continue to apply a system of mandatory medical insurance. With the support of the World Health Organization, we have developed a national strategy for reproductive health covering the period 2019 to 2025. Currently, the draft law on reproductive health and family planning is before our Parliament for consideration. In analyzing the recommendations, we see that issues of discrimination against women and domestic violence issues are of interest to the international community as a whole. Our government will continue to apply the necessary measures to address these issues in order to improve control mechanisms and strengthen legal protection for victims. Currently, the draft National Plan of Action to prevent domestic violence is being coordinated at the state level. In terms of further promotion of the rights of children, we are developing a draft children's code and national strategy. There is a state program for medical assistance for children for the years 2018 to 2022. At the end of May this year, our Parliament adopted a law on the rights of persons with disabilities. This was developed in compliance with the provisions of the United Nations Convention on Persons with Disabilities and covers the basic principles of state policy connected with these issues, together with social support, rehabilitation, employment, and other issues that affect persons with disabilities. Distinguished colleagues, it is now 30 years since basic human rights and freedoms of Azerbaijani refugees from Armenia and those who were forced to leave the occupied territories became a challenge within the United Nations system and the human rights protection mechanisms. Azerbaijan calls on the Human Rights Council and the special mechanisms, as well as the High Commissioner for Human Rights, to take effective measures to restore the rights of the Azerbaijani refugees and forced migrants in keeping with the resolutions of the Security Council and General Assembly. We will continue to work to improve the situation of the refugees and displaced persons. As a whole, over the past 25 years, that group has been allocated over $8 billion by our government. In the Çocuk-Marjanali region, freed from Armenian occupation in April 2016, as a result of the rebuttal of Armenian forces, we were able to provide 150 houses, a school, a kindergarten, a medical center, and other social infrastructure. Mr. President, the recommendations put forward by Armenia are not in keeping with the purpose of the UPR, and they seek to uphold Armenia's occupation strategy. Armenia continues to ignore the resolutions of the Security Council and General Assembly. Unfortunately, the latest statements by the new leadership of Armenia undermine the peaceful negotiations process and seek to further the goal of occupation of Azerbaijani territories, thus giving rise to new threats. The responsibility for this entirely lies with the leadership of Armenia. We call on the leaders of Armenia not to repeat previous mistakes and to be constructive in addressing a settlement of the conflict on the basis of unconditional freeing of the occupied territories of our country with a support for the territorial integrity of our state. In conclusion, once more, we reiterate Azerbaijan's readiness to cooperate within the framework of the UPR, and we thank the Troika, Slovenia, the United Arab Emirates and Ecuador, as well as the Secretariat, for their skillful support to the process. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank His Excellency Mr.